Kim just explained a situation where she had gone to a yoga studio as a yoga teacher and felt abused during her time there. And it was temporary, but so I'm just giving a little backstory if somebody's watching this. It was in a temporary situation, but because we had all trained with the same source and we all called ourselves by the same name, I'm going to admit Laura really quickly. Because we all trained through the same source, and we were calling ourselves by the same name, we have these expectations that everyone's in alignment, that everyone agrees to a certain ground rules. And I don't know if it's either because of or thanks to the fracture in the yoga community, we have come to realize that just because we're using the same name and we went through the same training, we're not aligned. We're not automatically aligned. And that it's our responsibility to take a look at what kind of things we consider hard boundaries and what kind of things that we expect when we're going somewhere. So the next time because you still plan to travel, Kim, you want to go to these places and you want to go to studios that are probably calling themselves Bikram, or maybe they're calling themselves hot yoga. Either way, I mean, and maybe 5 years ago, if somebody called themselves hot yoga, I automatically thought they wanted nothing to do with Bikram. It's not true. That's not true. But it was an expectation that I had based on just my own. I hadn't asked them. I hadn't checked in with them. I hadn't even really checked in with myself. What does that mean? So it's really important so I'm going to get back to what I said I was going to get back to, Kimberly, I promise. But, and hi, Laura, nice to see you. So there's a viral video out there, Super Soul Sunday with Oprah, from Oprah, sponsored by Oprah. Oprah's not in it, with a woman named Brene Brown. She's a pop psychologist. She is definitely digestible. She is not, you can go deeper with the work that she does. And we will on these Fridays for sure. But when you watch the video, it's about 20 minutes. I've seen it 100 times at least. I've seen it so many times. She breaks down trust and she says, it's a huge word, the word trust, to say, I trust you. I don't trust you. This is a huge word, and it can be as hurtful as it can be liberating to hear that somebody doesn't trust you. It can be as wonderful as it is oppressive to hear that somebody does trust you if you don't understand the words that break down trust. And so there's 7 of them. And hey, Michael. So the first one is the one that we're talking about today, which is boundaries. No boundaries, no trust, she says. The next one, and now I'm just going to go through the rest of them, and then we'll come back to boundaries. So boundaries, reliability, accountability, the vault, which addresses gossip, which addresses the idea of gossip, integrity, non-judgment, and generosity. So she breaks them all down in pretty simple terms about what she thinks those 7 words mean. But what's beautiful about coming up with an idea is that if you set it free, it takes on a life of its own. And it's the same thing with Bikram yoga. So now that it's been set free, it's taken on a life of its own. So it's up to us to, if you're going to go to a new studio, to have your boundaries in place, to check in with yourself about them, whatever they are, especially if you're going to teach for that place, especially if you plan to teach for that place. So when Kimberly was talking about going to Chicago, name of the studio is Bikram. That was a big deal to her. All the teachers certified Bikram, big deal to her. She goes there and she finds out, wow, I thought that meant something. It means something different to them. And so, of course, if you're traveling through a town and you need yoga, you love your yoga practice, you need yoga, you call the studio or you look in there online and you see that it's a 90-minute class, you're going to go there with the expectation that you're going to be in that room for 90 minutes. And if you want more, you've got to check in. What's the source of the teacher training? Is this a 90-minute vinyasa class? Is it a 90-minute original hot yoga class? How do they get their heat? All of these questions might be important to you. They might not be important to you. That might not be a boundary. It might just be a preference. So it's good to check in with that. And I think that those things will shift over time too. As I said, 5 years ago, if I found out that the teacher wasn't certified through Bikram, and this is pre-pandemic, and they weren't certified through Bikram, the first thought in my mind was the right way is the hard way. They probably went through some Mickey Mouse easy training. I don't trust them. Why don't I trust them? Because maybe there was some prejudgment on my part that my training is the best training, but it really came down to integrity. So they're not practicing their values. They're just professing them. They just want to be a hot yoga teacher. They didn't necessarily go through the right way. Fast forward to 2023, when there is no option to go see the source. Not only that, but the source has been so corrupted that does it even exist anymore? Does the source even exist anymore? So I'm starting to develop myself a boundary around that, where I'm not necessarily what we used to call drinking the Kool-Aid. I'm not necessarily drinking the Kool-Aid anymore and believing that if they don't have the top quality Bikram teachers, then I don't want to waste my time. I'm starting to say, obviously, because I've run a training, but it's just something about boundaries and how you need to check in with yourself. You set boundaries to keep yourself safe from emotional heartache, from physical heartache, from physical pain, but you have to check in with them. Because, I mean, have you ever gone to a place and experienced something and said, I'm never going back. I'm never going back there again. And a year later, it's a new owner. It's a new menu. It's a new something, new. You know, why did you put that limit there? It was just a boundary. It was just a boundary you needed to set that was temporary. So boundaries are important. You need to reflect on them. Of course, you need to check in with yourself. What is my boundary? And then you need to continuously check in with it. Why did I set that? What was it based on? How is it still serving me, or can I let it go? And I think you'll run into this as a yoga teacher if you teach for multiple locations and also with your students. How do you set healthy boundaries with your students? And I think there are probably a couple of examples that we can set for sure, emphatic. But again, they may change. So you have a pre-existing relationship with a student before you became a teacher. And now you're a teacher. Of course, you can still spend time with that student socially. Of course you can. However, now that you're a teacher and you meet new and interesting people as students, you have to be careful how you socialize with those people, because they see you as their yoga teacher. They see you as their yoga teacher, and it's a slippery slope of showing favoritism, confusing them. Of course, you're not a social worker, and we have to stay within the parameters of the scope of your profession. But I still believe, is everyone familiar with the word transference? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I still believe there is a risk of transference between a yoga student and a yoga teacher, especially in the heat, especially in this style of yoga. The brand new student walks in, who knows where they're coming from an emotional place or physical place. And you're just clear. You're just do this. They do it. They walk out of the room and they think you did something. You did.
As teachers, we're confident, and confidence is sexy.
Agreed. You did do something. And honestly, it goes back to the old adage, sex sells. I mean, you look sexy too. I don't care who you are. When you're standing in front of the room with the microphone on and your spine is straight up and down, you look good. And a student who's never done yoga before, or maybe had really terrible experiences, and they walk in and they experience you, there's a risk of transference. They're going to think, and it's really simple transference. You know, it could just be like, you did that. But
and that's not sexual, right, Jen? It could be a mother figure. It could be a father figure, right?
It could be something like that. But it slowly grows over time into something. If you don't catch it early on, if you don't say things like, you did that, that was your work. You have to be careful and set those boundaries early on with someone. To accept praise from someone when they're in a vulnerable space, you have to be so careful with that. Look at that praise, see what it sounds like and what it feels like, even especially if it feels like juicy. Like, yeah, I did that. If you feel that way, be so careful with how you express it, because they may start to have feelings for you that go beyond what is reality. So that's why I wanted to bring up the concept of boundaries. And that's how you build trust. It's how you build self-trust and trust with people in your vicinity. When someone witnesses you saying, "You did that," somebody walks out of the room. "Thank you. That was an amazing class. You're an amazing teacher." You can accept that praise, and then you put it on them as well. You did that work. You're welcome, but you did the hardest thing. You got here. And then other people hear that and they think, okay, great. She's not an egomaniac, or she acknowledges that really all she did was stand in the front of the room and speak. Totally fine. I want them to think that. That's a boundary I need to keep so that they don't confuse their feelings for me. And I'm totally open to anybody who has a story that they want to share or a question that you may have.
I just want you to, if you don't mind, talking about your concept of give everybody equal time.
Oh yeah, I will definitely do that. So before I move on, does anybody have a question about that specifically? Or a story, a situation that they want to share? So one of the ways you can protect yourself, a boundary you can set as a teacher, is to make sure that you're giving your time equitably among the students. And that is challenging, particularly when you feel you can help a certain student. So if there's a certain student in the room and posture after posture, you just feel like, oh man, I got this. I know this one. I know the thing she's doing and I can help her. You still have to, or him, you still have to step back and give other people in the room the equitable amount of time. I think a good rule of thumb is 3. 3 is the maximum that you mention anyone's name, including yourself. So if you get to 3, you can't talk about that person anymore, including yourself. So it's important for you to infuse a little bit of you into the experience. Oh, I get it. You know, when I'm in this posture, I experience that. You bond with somebody. They may need to hear it. But if you do it too many times, the class becomes about you. So the magic number is 3. I think 2 is perfect. If you can find a way to talk about everybody in the room twice, it's amazing. That being said, I had to revise my opinion a little bit thanks to the pandemic, because we only, as a teacher, there's only 9 students in the room, 90 minutes. I mean, that just doesn't work. I say somebody's name twice and I have nothing to talk about necessarily anymore. So if you feel like you've got one of those teeny tiny classes, you can spend a little bit more time, but then it's really a good idea to remind them that this is a special experience. You're getting me for 90 minutes. It's almost a private lesson. Really important to say things like that so that they get that in their head. This is special. This is special that I just got 90 minutes with Ashley and there was only 3 of us. We learned a lot. So that's the one exception to that rule. I don't think I would have really thought much about that had it not been for the pandemic, but we developed some real intimacy with the students during the time of the pandemic. And it gave me pause. That it was that experience that allowed me to reflect on the anatomy of trust and these relationships that I'm building. And they're trusting relationships because I'm adhering to the tenets of the anatomy of trust, of the language of trust. And I'm saying it's not just I trust you, I don't trust you. It's I feel like I have healthy boundaries with these students so that I can really help them with their standing head to knee. I feel like these students signed up online, showed up for my class. They're accountable. They're accountable for their actions. They're not constantly canceling, or they're not just showing up on a whim and expecting me to drop everything to add them to the class. I shared something really deep with the students that practiced with us during the pandemic for that reason. And I learned a lot about trust through it and setting healthy boundaries. And then as we opened up our doors more, a lot of those students missed that space and time with me, with Michael, with the teachers. And they had to start addressing their sense of entitlement. Gosh, I miss those days when I got you all to myself. And here I am thinking, thank God those days are over. So I have to treat their feelings healthy as well. I'm not going to say that, oh yeah, thank God they're over. Bye. I have to hold space for what they're going through while I'm simultaneously thrilled that restrictions are lifted and more students can come in. So this is something that you will be gauged on in your certificate of standards, how you maintain healthy boundaries with students. So please know that I'm here for you. I know this mostly felt like a lecture and you didn't get to chat too much. And all of you are professionals. And I highly respect that you've had a military career, Kimberly. You work in public schools. I can't even begin to imagine how hard you work to set up your boundaries and hold true to them, Laura. The work that you do, Ashley, blows my mind. It's still different when you're teaching yoga. It's still a different experience when you're teaching yoga. So always be checking in with your boundaries, with who you are, and remember that if a boundary is a boundary for a long time, it's a limit. So you got to check in with that. If you are limited, it's important. Boundaries are important. They keep you safe. They protect your heart. But if you just keep saying, nope, no, no, it is definitely a place that you will fester, you will not grow. So that's my 2 cents on boundaries. Thanks everybody for being here. Before we go, do we have any questions or last minute thoughts?
I just have a question about, I understand the boundaries you're talking about, but right now I just am experiencing still this like thing with boundaries in the room when I'm teaching and students' energy and focus. And I guess my boundary is keeping myself focused and not allowing the students just, however they're not keeping still or trying to get my attention or whatever they're doing, because that's what they're doing right then and there. That boundary is really hard when you are standing right in the front of the room with the students like right there in front of you. And it's just something I've been really struggling with lately. And I like I said, I've moved when it becomes like necessary, but I still need to go back to the front and I just don't know what to do. Then I'm like looking at the ground or I'm looking like over towards the other side. And then I forget about the other side. It's just something. I just wanted to mention it in the context.
It is definitely something that you'll face. It's a beginner practice. And most of the people that are in that room are really struggling with some of those beginner concepts of yoga, which is the stillness and the breathing. So I would recommend that the next time it happens to look at it with curiosity, put your curiosity hat on and just look at it with curiosity. As soon as it starts to like edge up onto the nerves, take your curiosity hat off, relocate in the room. But I think the next time you see it, to look at it with a little bit more curiosity and wonder, because you could probably offer that person a specific correction that would be general, that can be used generally. You can say, take a deep breath. It's just something you can just say, take a deep breath, because you're looking at them and they're pissing you off, but they're clenching and they're holding their breath. Or there's probably something that they're doing that if you looked at them with your curiosity hat, you might be able to help. And it'll help you as well. Whenever there's friction, there's always something that can lubricate it. Yeah. I feel like maybe that might help. And then also when you look at them with curiosity and it still doesn't answer, then later you can do, thanks to the internet, you can do a little Google search of, you can literally type it in. I experienced this today when I saw somebody. What could that be? I mean, that's how I learned a lot about ADHD and the differences between ADHD and people who are truly Asperger's. Because there are some people, it's a dismissive statement. So be mindful if you ever use it. But there are some people who are on the spectrum and people use it very dismissively. Oh, that person's on the spectrum. And I mean, as soon as a statement comes to life, people start to make jokes about it and it wanders into the zeitgeist and people use it poorly or well. So be mindful of it. But there are a lot of people who are attracted to this style of yoga. They're looking at the mirror. They're not looking at you. So there is a little bit of a disconnect. They don't realize you can see them. They're not thinking about the fact that you can see them. They're looking at themselves. So they're not really thinking, when I'm having a conversation with you, I'm looking at you. I know you can see me. You're looking at me. As soon as I walk into the room, some people disconnect from that relationship. and you're
Well,
the
Jen,
one in charge of it.
they feel safe.
They feel safe, and you're in charge of that. As the teacher, you're in charge of that. So when you feel that frustration, maybe put your curiosity cap on, take a look at it, and then when you leave the room, you do a little search of, wow, I experienced this today. And again, it's a way to check in with those 7 words that I told you that build up trust. I remember, I'll give you this last example and then I'll leave you guys to it. I remember this one person who kept coming to take the class. I fucking hated this person. Excuse me. And every time they showed up, I was like, oh. And they thought they acted the same way towards me. And one time they came in, they took class. I didn't feel the frustration I'd felt before because I was having a great day or something. And after class, I thought, they're coming to take my class. They trust me. I have to respect that. What the fuck is wrong with me? Why am I letting this person by? I'm the one in charge of this relationship. I need to stop acting like a goddamn baby and take responsibility for the situation. And they kept coming back and taking my class. Anyway, I don't necessarily like this person, but I understand that that's not what my job on earth is in that relationship. It wasn't to like them, it's to love them and to build trust with them and with myself and to forgive myself for being a bitch and a baby, but also to see it and to move past it and not be in that place where when someone shows up, I'm like, oh. So, I mean, if that helps, I hope it helps. You as the teacher are definitely the one in charge of that relationship. And then when you leave the studio, they're in charge of their relationships and you're in charge of yours. But when you see them out and about, they think of you as their yoga teacher. And they respect that. So people who do yoga and have yoga teachers, they respect yoga teachers. Maybe people who don't do yoga don't. They don't know anything about it. I mean, I've had doctors and lawyers and people with advanced degrees show me the respect of the yoga teacher that you get in India. It's pretty cool. So, I mean, think about this. Angel thinks of you as his yoga teacher. That it's important to him. And he just blindly trusts us. I think about that sometimes when I want to be an asshole. Like, what would Angel think of me? But seriously, I mean, you're a pillar of the community. Once you start teaching yoga, you are. And it grows and grows and grows. So you have to check in with yourself when you're feeling those emotions. Check them at the door when you walk in. And then you're human, so you're going to experience people being mean to you, being disrespectful, but it doesn't mean that you return it in kind. It means that you look at it and you think, I mean, there are times where I think I have no words. And then I hear myself think that and I think, exactly, don't say anything. I have no words means exactly that. Yeah, think before you speak. So next week, I think we'll talk about reliability because I'm just going to go through the acronym. And I really appreciate everybody's time. I will check in before we start next week. I'll say, hey, did you think about a boundary that you have in place? You can share it with me, what a little boundary you have that's in place. And before you arrive next week, I would love it if you are mindful about the word reliability. You can look it up. What does the word mean? But it's more important to look up a couple of definitions of the word, but then have your own definition. What does it mean to be reliable? Adrian said the neatest thing. He said, when somebody's always late, they're kind of reliable. Because I can count on that. You're always late. So what the hell? How dare you show up early? I'm used to you being late. So it's a great conversation starter with somebody that you're not necessarily bad or good for always being late. That's just something that that's what I can count on. That's what you're telling me. That's your language. I'm always late. Tell me what time you want me to be here. I want you to be there at 1. And then over time, I realized, I got to tell this person 12:30. So that's their language. I'm always late. So you're going to tell me 15 minutes or 30 minutes before so that I get you when I need you. Anyway, thanks guys. I will see you next week.
Thank you. See y'all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.